Good morning and welcome to the Byron Center webinar series, Call on Your Chamber. I'm Jennifer Lukasich, the Executive Director for the Byron Center Chamber of Commerce. Today, we're doing things a little differently. Today's topic is Ask the Lawyer. We have Gravis Law on the line answering questions that were submitted by our members. I'd like to take a minute to thank our strategic partners. These businesses have gone above and beyond in supporting the Chamber and the community. We're pleased to offer video sponsorships for our webinars. Today's sponsor is Spartan-Nash YMCA. I now introduce you to Brianna Golke-Clausen, their Executive Director.
Thanks, Jennifer, and thanks so much for allowing us this time to just talk about the why and what we're doing here in the community right now. Although many traditional services are disrupted in response to the COVID-19 crisis, we at the Y are providing essential services in the form of emergency childcare, food distribution, and wellness support for our members and community. Some fun facts about what's been happening at the Y over these last couple of weeks. Almost 8,000 members have enjoyed virtual workouts. We've served more than 38,000 children meals since the crisis began. 99 patients have been impacted by life-saving blood drives here at the Spartan-Nash Y. Over 2,000 minutes of youth enrichment activities, storytime, and craft projects have been completed through our online learnings. And additionally, here at the Spartan-Nash Y, we're providing child care for Metro Health medical teams so they can focus on getting our community healthy again, serving over 95 families in this community. We're committed to leading the community in building support, and we are excited to get back and open when the time is right. But if you're interested in learning more about these aspects of the Y and how you can support us, definitely check out our website at grymca.org/support.
Thank you so much, Brianna. It's just amazing to see what you guys are able to do and pivot in this time that's just so different and still provide all the services that are necessary to keep the community going.
Yeah, we're excited to be able to support in this way. It's what we do best.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you.
I'd now like to introduce you to our presenters. Gravis Law provides tailored legal services for their clients across the nation and locally in the Grand Rapids and Muskegon office locations. Today's attorneys Anthony Norman, Bonnie Lent Davis, and Amber Soler join us to answer your questions. The Grand Rapids office handles business law, cannabis law, bankruptcy, estate planning, and family law matters. Welcome, Anthony, Bonnie, and Amber. We're excited to have you join us today. Before we get started, I know a lot of you might have some questions that come up during the presentation. For today, I'd like to ask that you just direct them to Gravis Law after the meeting, as we might not have time. So when we get to the end, we'll determine that, but we might just need to direct them directly to Gravis Law. I'm going to kick us off with the first question, and I'm going to have Anthony Norman is going to answer it. Can you explain what is going on in the lawsuit between the state legislature and the governor?
Sure. Well, first off, thank you, Jennifer, for having us. We are glad to be here and excited to have our offices now in Muskegon and the Grand Rapids area. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of you have probably been watching in the news regarding the legislature and the governor fighting back and forth over authority. And it's something that's been common amongst other states. It's one of the reasons why Wisconsin is open right now. Essentially, to simplify it, what's been happening is there's two laws that have been enacted in Michigan, one in 1945, another in 1976. The governor has bounced back from both laws, saying that she has authority under each executive or each law to issue executive orders. The legislature has said no, her authority comes through 1976. So what's essentially happened is, since she has lost her ability, 1976 Act has not been approved to be extended the state of emergency. She has now, what the legislature is arguing, does not have the authority to issue these executive orders. Her argument is that she does under the 1945 Act. So not to go too in depth, but essentially both acts give the governor powers to issue executive orders in the state of Michigan in certain situations. And the 1945 Act, what I would argue, and it was what the legislature is arguing, is it does not give the governor the ability to issue orders in a pandemic. It would give her the ability to issue executive orders if there was rioting, if there's a natural disaster similar to what's going on in Ottawa County with the flooding. But I strongly believe that there's a good argument and that the legislature is correct. She is arguing, of course, that it is broad enough to encompass a pandemic. So that is where this legal battle has now transpired in the Michigan courts. Oral arguments were last Friday. The Court of Claims judge will hopefully make her ruling soon. But as her last thing she said, actually Amber and I were watching the oral arguments online. The last thing she said was, "This will go to my bosses," because obviously whoever loses will end up appealing it to the Michigan Supreme Court, which will ultimately make the determination. And with that, I will turn it over to Bonnie with a couple of questions she has, or answers to a couple of questions.
All right. Thanks, Anthony, and thanks, Jennifer, for having us today. I have question number 2. Question number 2 is, what happens to a business if they just say they can't remain closed anymore and they choose to go against the executive order and open up? I know there are probably a lot of business owners out there right now trying to figure out what they should do because of obviously cash flow and looking long term. First of all, I think it's really important to acknowledge that things are changing fast in Michigan. It seems to me that every time there's a news conference with the governor, we have 1 or 2 new executive orders. I looked at the executive orders, and there's been a total of 88 executive orders declared over just the past 8 weeks. Some of those have been rescinded, and a majority of those are still in effect. They don't all apply to business, but there are a couple of them that I would direct your attention to. I'm skipping down in my notes because I think it's important. The newest executive orders, Executive Order 92, the governor in that executive order divides up the state into different regions. I think that this gives businesses maybe a glimpse of when they might be opened. She just declared that regions 6 and 8, which is northern Michigan, can open back up with some precautions and prepared plans. Also, Executive Order 2020-91 lists those things that businesses should consider and the guidelines they should put in place and the plan they have to have in place by June 1 or within 2 weeks of resuming in-person activities. So I would just direct you to those 2, even though there's a lot of executive orders. Now, as a business owner, if you decide now that you just can't wait any longer, you're just going to take your chances and open up. Obviously, that's a personal decision. The executive orders, as Anthony was just discussing, are right now in the courts determining if they are in fact valid and if the governor has the authority to issue especially all the recent executive orders. I think it's important to look at the activity in your county with your county sheriffs. The Attorney General passed the power of enforcement down to the counties when it comes to enforcing the executive orders. Each of the executive orders that relates to business operations do say in there that any willful violation is subject to the charge of a misdemeanor, which would be through the criminal court. There also are avenues that the state can take against a business owner that are administrative and civil. Administrative would be relating to your license. Can they suspend your license, especially if you're a barber or you cut hair or something like that? Your license may be suspended. They can take actions maybe against restaurants that have license in place as well. Lastly, a civil fine. There is a civil fine of $1,000. It can be $1,000 every day that you're open. I have a friend with a flower shop that was told by the association she belongs to that she could be fined $1,000 for every delivery that she makes if the police stopped her and gave her a citation, or if she was reported, because that would be a civil fine. So those are the things to consider if you feel like you have to make that decision to open. But I think it's really important to know your county and your county sheriff. Right now, Kent County has been silent. I saw a really great video that was very informative by the Livingston County Sheriff on Facebook. So if you want to hear kind of the thought behind a sheriff's department, and it kind of goes through the history of the law, actually. That's a really informative video to look up. So that would be question 2. I also have question number 3. This question kind of falls within my specific area of law, which is bankruptcy practice. I do business as well. Question 3 is, I own a business of less than a year, which has been fully closed during this health crisis. Our cash is dwindling rapidly, and I'm not sure we can survive until the economy has fully restarted. My assets now are less than I borrowed to fund my startup. Before we run totally out of cash and can't pay anything on our debts, should I consider bankruptcy? If so, which option is best for my circumstances? First of all, this question is quite detailed and actually technical within the bankruptcy code to be able to answer it today. And I just want to say that every case is a little bit different. I think some of the pointers I'm going to give are things that you should consider if you feel like this is an option you may have to look at down the road. It's kind of some of the pre-planning that you might want to look at if you are facing a possible bankruptcy. First of all, with regard to right now and operations and use of cash, I always use this term called priority use of money. What is your priority use of money? Those things that you don't have options on. And again, we're talking about business debt in this question, not necessarily your household budget. So in this question, it sounded like to me that they had funds related to a startup. So we're talking about business debt. Look at your contracts, read your contracts, see what the terms are of your contracts. Can you renegotiate any of those? Do you have a provision in your contract that references either acts of God, or there's also a legal term called force majeure, which means superior force, that some superior force has occurred that makes it impossible that you can, perform the contract. If that's in place, or if you feel that relates to one of your contracts, then I would contact that vendor and ask if you can renegotiate that. I think some of the questions I've gotten are related to rent of a commercial building. I would just encourage you to be in contact with your landlord, communicate frequently, see if you can renegotiate the terms of your lease, because that landlord will want you to stay there. They need your stability as well. They need you, you need them. I would contact them and see if you can renegotiate, maybe paying a portion of your rent, maybe extending the term of the commitment, something like that. The same is true. I mean, what I want to emphasize there is if you have cash available and you're looking to restart, obviously you're going to need that capital to restart for inventory or supplies and that type of thing. So again, just think of that term, priority use of money. What is the best use of the money right now? After you take those steps to preserve what you can for the assets to restart your business, and if you feel like, depending on how long our region is going to be closed, that you may be looking at the bankruptcy option, then there's a few things that I would remind folks to consider if you're looking at bankruptcy. First of all, when you look at bankruptcy, your personal assets remain separate from your business assets. The same with the debt, unless you've signed personally on a loan, a business loan. It's important not to commingle your accounts. Keep those separate. Don't use business accounts to pay personal expenses, that type of thing. The goal of a bankruptcy really is to preserve your personal estate, your assets, your home, your retirement funds. Your business loan may also be secured by your primary residence, so it's important that you verify that. A lot of times the SBA loans are secured by your home, or you might have a home equity loan related to your business. You need to know how that affects your home as well if you were going to consider filing. It's important to know that in bankruptcy, a portion of your home equity is protected in full. If you're married, that number is different, but it's quite a bit of equity that you can protect. That becomes important if you're considering taking out a home equity loan to maybe help your business or pay expenses. As soon as you do that, or even a debt consolidation for your business loan or credit cards related to the business, as soon as you do that, you may put your home at risk if your income drops or you're not able to make your house payment, because this home equity loan will have to be paid as well. Retirement savings are protected 100% in bankruptcy. So I've met with people that come down the road after they've pretty much exhausted everything. They've used money out of their retirement or 401k loan to help with their business and they end up having to file bankruptcy still. Those retirement funds are protected 100% if you have to look at filing a bankruptcy. So that's really important to know. If you have tax liability, a Chapter 13 personal reorganization is a good tool to handle tax debt. As soon as you file, penalties and interest will stop, and you can get that tax debt repaid over a period of 3 to 5 years. Also, really important to note that there is a look-back period if you're looking to transfer assets, which means you're selling off things to generate income, or you're transferring property out of your name, or if you're giving money to help family members. There is a look-back period, and the trustee can ask for some of those items to be returned. So that gets a little bit sticky. So hopefully those precautions in looking down the road for pre-planning will help you preserve assets in your personal estate. But again, every case is different, and I'd be glad to answer any questions. Question 4 goes back to Anthony.
Thanks, Bonnie. So the next 2 questions I'm going to group together. They're both dealing with liability. The first is, when we reopen, we'll use a number of safety procedures, social distancing, extra cleaning, etc. Will I still be legally liable if someone catches the virus while in my business? I don't know how that can be proven, but just want to be extra careful. And then question 5, on the similar spectrum of liability, if we do extra cleaning, social distancing, control of people to avoid crowding in our business and so on, is that enough reasonable care to protect me from liability in my LLC business? So like I said, both of these have to do with liability. And I think I was, before the executive order 2020-91 came out yesterday, the first thing I was going to recommend everyone do is prepare a preparedness and response plan and have training procedures in place, and really go to OSHA is a great resource. The governor actually issued an order and stated everything I was going to state here. So really looking at that executive order will give you some great insight as to what you need to do, as well as the actual OSHA guidelines on what needs to be in place. Making sure that you have that documented, you're training your employees, you notify your customers will really help you in the long run, both satisfying the requirements of the state as well as liability. Now, that's not going to save you from any lawsuit. As a litigator, as someone that's practiced law in South Florida where it is very litigious, someone can sue you for anything. The key is to minimize risk. And by doing these things, you will minimize that risk. And if a lawsuit were to happen, you will have those documents in place to show the court that you made every necessary step to ensure the safety of your customers and your employees. So I definitely would highly recommend that you go to the OSHA guidelines, you look through the executive order. If you need help with your preparedness and response plan, we over here at Gravis Law can help you with reviewing it to make sure that it is proper, or drafting them for you. We're happy to do it, but I think that is the best way to minimize any potential risk you could have. Is following those guidelines, making sure you have those plans in place, training your employees, and making sure that everything has been put in place to minimize the potential for risk. So with that, I will turn it over back over to Bonnie for question 6.
Yeah, in question 6, I'm going to go through this one quickly so that Amber has enough time to get to our other questions. This one says, I know that my employees are hurting financially. Even with the enhanced unemployment payments, I was not able to get one of the PPP loans. Is there anything else I can do to help them? I think that during this time, one of the most important things is to be in contact with your employees. I think that this hardship is going to separate the exceptional employers from the good employers. I think that by trying to show some of the company culture and checking on the well-being of your employees is going to benefit you in the long run. A couple of things that maybe you can consider or that I have seen are making a personal phone call to each of your employees, providing an email address where they can reach out to you privately if they have a special need or designated need, making all of their needs are met, the shelter, food, that type of thing. My son's employer gave them the option to take $1,000 advance to be paid back 2 months down the road, broken down into like 8 pay periods. That was big. That helped him with rent. So if you're able to do some type of emergency advance, that's one option. Some employers are covering health insurance premiums. That's been a big help here in my family. There are some creative ways too. I've seen business owners set up GoFundMe and then share it amongst their Facebook or social media platform for their regular vendors. And then just sending a gift card for groceries, that would be very helpful too. But in the end, I think communicating frequently and honestly about the status of the business is one of the most important things. And with that, I'll turn it over to Amber.
All right, thanks, Bonnie. So some of the last 2 questions just kind of have to do with, personally what you can do with your business and if you're having trouble with getting people to comply. So the first question is, if people are coming to my store will not follow the instructions, such as wearing a mask or maintaining distance from others, what are my options? I'm a small business and I can't afford extra employees to manage our guests. So you'll want to make sure that your expectations for your customers are laid out very openly. I suggest hanging signs if you want people to continue to wear masks in your business. Post a sign asking them to do that. Post a sign asking them to remain 6 feet. Consider posting more than one. Posting it in visible locations throughout your business. If they still will not follow, your expectations, even after you verbally ask them to, you have the right as a business owner that is, you have the right to your property to maintain it as you see fit, as long as you're not doing it in a discriminatory manner. So you can ask them to leave. It's very similar to things that have been in place for years and years with the no shoes, no shirt, no service. You have the right to ask them to leave and not offer them the services that they're requesting. If they still refuse to comply and you think that they're putting you or your employees or your other customers at risk, then you have the right to contact the local police and have them offer their assistance. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but it is there as a safety net. The next question is, if one of my competitors has reopened, I think it violates the governor's orders. Is there anything I can do about that? Technically, there is. Your first option would be to contact local authorities and place a complaint with them. If they're not able to do anything, you are able to contact the Attorney General's office still. There's a phone number. It's 877-765-8388, or you can file a complaint online through the Attorney General's office. You would click on the Consumer Complaints link. However, I would caution you on really taking any action. I think in the long run, what businesses choose to do, if a business chooses to open early and violate the orders, they run the risk of losing some customers and clientele on their own just due to their own action. And I think, with this limited amount of time that we have left with the stay-at-home order hopefully being in place, kind of do a benefit analysis to see if it's really going to be worth it for you to fuss over, or if it's something that you can just kind of brush off and say, well, that's what they choose to do, but it's not the right thing for me, and I'm just going to do what I think is best. And those are that's the biggest thing to keep in mind right now is do what's best for you. If someone else is doing something that you don't agree with, if you think it's putting others at serious risk, then contact the proper authorities. If not, I would say kind of brush it off for now. I do think that wraps up all of the questions that we had received beforehand. We have about 5 minutes left. I don't know if Jennifer wants to open it back up for a few quick questions. If not, I would highly recommend that if you have any follow-up questions, you go to our website at gravislaw.com and make an appointment to talk with one of us. We offer free consultations right now, and we'd be happy to speak about you, to you about your particular situation.
Thanks, Bonnie. We had some technical difficulties, and Jennifer got kicked off the call. But I really would like to thank Gravis Law for being here today and to help answer these questions. I'm sure a lot of us get confused by everything coming out today. So we really appreciate Anthony, Amber, and Bonnie, and also like to thank Brianna with Spartan Nash YMCA for joining us and being the sponsor for today's episode. And again, I'd like to thank our strategic partners. Without them, none of this would be possible. So, if you have any further questions regarding any of these issues or confusion, again, please contact Gravis Law. But otherwise, we will see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.